It was a bright sunny morning at the busy airport, and people were rushing past each other with hurried steps and anxious expressions. Luggage trolleys clattered across the polished floors, announcements echoed over the loudspeakers, and travelers spoke into their phones as they tried to catch their flights. Among the crowd was a young girl, about 12 years old, who seemed almost invisible to most adults hurrying by. She was quiet, thoughtful, and observant, with eyes that noticed details others often overlooked. She was at the airport with her mother, waiting for a friend who was traveling, but as she looked around, her attention was drawn to something unusual. The private jet terminal was cordoned off, with sleek black vehicles dropping off well-dressed passengers. Security guards stood by with stern expressions, scanning IDs and checking bags. One of the passengers, a millionaire known for his international business ventures, was preparing to board his private jet. He was tall, confident, and wore an expensive suit that made him stand out from the crowd. Cameras and security personnel followed him as he walked through the terminal. The girl noticed him immediately, not because of his wealth or fame, but because something about the way the ground crew moved around the plane seemed off to her. It was subtle, a hand brushing against the fuel line, a glint of metal where it didn't belong, but her sharp eyes caught it. At first, she thought she might be imagining things. She had seen movies and news stories where planes were sabotaged, and a small, cautious part of her mind told her to ignore it. After all, she was just a child, and the adults around seemed completely unconcerned. The security officers were focused on their routine checks. The crew was handling luggage, and the millionaire was chatting casually with his assistant. But she couldn't shake the feeling that something was wrong. She took a deep breath and tried to focus, observing the plane more closely. Her eyes scanned the wings, the engine, and the boarding steps. That's when she noticed it. A small device that didn't belong connected near the fuel intake. It was cleverly hidden, easy to miss, but she could see the wires and the metallic casing. Her heart began to race. She knew that if this was left unchecked, it could end in disaster, but she was only a child, and she wasn't sure how to get the attention of someone powerful enough to stop it. She glanced at the millionaire as he walked toward the plane, completely unaware of the danger waiting for him. He smiled and waved at his assistant, looking relaxed and confident. To everyone else, it seemed like just another ordinary day at the airport. But to the girl, time suddenly felt urgent. She had to act, and she had to act now. Her mind raced through the possibilities. Should she tell one of the guards? But the guards were busy and didn't seem to notice anything wrong. What if they dismissed her because she was just a kid? Could she stop the millionaire herself? No, that wasn't possible. She had to find a way to make him understand that the danger was real. She clenched her fists and decided that she couldn't remain silent. The risk was too high, and she couldn't let fear hold her back. She took a deep breath, steadied herself, and ran toward the boarding area. People looked at her curiously as she pushed past the crowd, small feet moving quickly across the polished floor. Her voice trembled slightly at first, but she forced herself to shout as loudly as she could, hoping that someone would hear. "Stop, your plane was sabotaged." For a moment, the airport seemed to freeze. The millionaire turned sharply, surprised and confused. His assistant's eyes widened, and security personnel immediately focused their attention on the source of the shout. The girl pointed toward the plane, trying to direct their attention to the suspicious device she had noticed. Her words were urgent, repeated over and over. "There's something wrong with your plane. You have to check it." Some people in the terminal gasped and stepped back, unsure of what was happening. Others assumed it was a child causing a scene or playing a prank. The millionaire hesitated, unsure whether to take the warning seriously. He looked at the girl, studying her small, determined frame. There was fear in her eyes, but also a clarity and conviction that made him pause. It was unusual for someone so young to shout with such certainty. Security officers approached the girl, bending down to speak to her. "Calm down, little one. What are you talking about?" one of them asked, trying to sound stern but clearly curious. She pointed again toward the plane. "It's true. There's something wrong with your plane. Someone sabotaged it," she said, her voice trembling with both fear and determination. "You have to check it." "Please don't board yet." The millionaire stepped closer, still cautious but intrigued. "Are you sure?" he asked, his voice low but serious. "Do you really think something is wrong?" "Yes," she shouted. "I saw it. There's a device near the fuel. I'm not lying." At this point, the crowd of passengers and airport staff began to notice the commotion. Some were curious, others skeptical. A few security guards exchanged glances, unsure how to respond to a child making such a claim. But the millionaire didn't ignore her. There was something about her courage and determination that demanded attention. He walked closer, crouching slightly to meet her eye level. "Show me," he said quietly with a tone that blended concern and urgency. "Tell me exactly what you saw." The girl took a deep breath, trying to steady her nerves. "Near the fuel intake on the left side of the plane," she explained quickly. "There's a small metal box with wires coming out. It doesn't belong there. Someone left it to make the plane unsafe. You can't board it until it's checked." The millionaire's face grew serious. He motioned to his assistant and the security team. "Check it now." Within moments, security personnel rushed toward the plane, inspecting the area the girl had pointed out. One of the engineers knelt down and carefully examined the fuel line. The rest of the crowd held their breath, unsure of what they would find. Seconds felt like hours as the engineer carefully lifted the suspicious object. Then confirmation. It was indeed a small sabotage device, cleverly hidden but deadly if left unchecked. The realization spread quickly among the staff, and a wave of shock and relief passed through the terminal. The millionaire turned to the girl, astonished and grateful. "You saved lives today," he said, his voice filled with awe. "Not just mine, but everyone who would have been on that plane." "How did you notice this?" The girl shrugged, a mixture of pride and disbelief on her face. "I just saw something that looked wrong," she said simply. "I couldn't ignore it. I had to say something." The crowd around them started clapping quietly, some shaking their heads in disbelief. A child, standing in the middle of a bustling airport, had prevented a potential tragedy. The security personnel praised her, noting her courage and sharp observation skills. Even other passengers looked at her with newfound respect, realizing that bravery and awareness could come from the most unexpected places. The millionaire knelt down slightly to her level again. "You acted when no one else did. You were brave and you were right. I can't thank you enough," he said. The girl smiled shyly, feeling both proud and overwhelmed. She never imagined that a regular day at the airport could turn into something so important. She had acted out of instinct, fear, and a sense of responsibility, and now her actions had saved lives. Security officers removed the sabotage device and inspected the entire plane thoroughly, ensuring that it was safe. Engineers and the airport police began investigating how it had ended up there, and the story of the young girl's bravery started to spread. Journalists nearby began taking notes, recognizing that this was a remarkable event worth reporting. The millionaire, still amazed, offered to personally thank her family and ensure that her courage was recognized in every possible way. The girl's mother, who had been watching anxiously, finally stepped forward, hugging her daughter tightly. "I'm so proud of you," she said, tears in her eyes. "You were brave and smart. You saved him. You saved lives." The girl felt a mixture of relief, pride, and a little disbelief. She had only done what she thought was right. But now the weight of the moment started to sink in. She had acted alone, without any help, and had prevented a disaster that could have ended tragically. As the plane was secured and the investigation continued, the millionaire made a quiet promise to himself. He would make sure that this brave, observant girl received the recognition she deserved. He also realized that sometimes heroes come in unexpected forms, not with experience or authority, but with courage, awareness, and the willingness to act when it matters most. That morning, an ordinary airport became the stage for extraordinary courage. A young girl, standing up when others hesitated, had changed the course of events and saved a millionaire from a potential disaster. And in doing so, she had proven that age, size, or experience does not determine bravery. Heart, awareness, and quick thinking do. The moment the girl had shouted her warning, the airport erupted into a mix of confusion, panic, and curiosity. People whispered to each other, glancing at the millionaire and the young girl, trying to understand what was happening. Some assumed it was a mistake or a prank, but the look of seriousness in the girl's eyes and the millionaire's sudden pause made it clear that this was no ordinary situation. The millionaire motioned to his assistant, who immediately pulled out a tablet and started scanning the boarding details and security. "Records. Call security and airport engineering now," he instructed, his voice calm but firm. "I want the plane checked before we do anything else." The girl stayed close, her small frame almost invisible amid the busy staff, but she didn't move away. She had to make sure they knew exactly what she had seen. "It's near the fuel intake," she repeated, pointing firmly. "There's a metal box with wires. It's not supposed to be there. Someone left it on purpose." Security officers rushed toward the plane, moving quickly but carefully. They brought tools and scanning devices to check for any dangerous materials. The girl followed, keeping just enough distance to stay safe but close enough to guide them if needed. Other airport staff were now watching from behind ropes, curious and anxious, while passengers were kept at a distance. As the team approached the plane, one of the engineers knelt near the fuel intake. The millionaire followed, his face tense but focused, showing a seriousness that commanded everyone's attention. The engineer's hands moved carefully, and the girl described what she had seen in detail. "It's small," she said. "Metallic, about the size of a lunchbox. Wires coming out of it. It looks like a timer or trigger. Please be careful." The engineer nodded, clearly impressed that a child had noticed something so subtle. "We've got this," he said, but his eyes scanned the device with cautious urgency. The engineer's team gathered around, using specialized tools to examine the suspicious object. The tension in the air was thick. Everyone knew that even the smallest mistake could be disastrous. The millionaire stood close, his mind racing through the possibilities, imagining what could have happened if the girl had stayed silent. He felt a mix of fear, gratitude, and awe. A child had saved his life, and perhaps the lives of the crew and anyone else who might have been on the plane. Finally, the lead engineer carefully lifted the device, examining it in detail. "This is a sabotage device," he announced, his voice firm but controlled. "It was meant to cause a serious problem with the fuel system. If the plane had taken off, it could have been catastrophic." A collective gasp went through the small crowd. People whispered among themselves, some shaking their heads in disbelief. The millionaire turned to the girl, his expression a mix of astonishment and gratitude. "You saw this before anyone else," he said. "Do you realize what you've done? You prevented a disaster. You saved lives." The girl's heart raced, and she felt a mix of relief and pride. I just saw something wrong," she said quietly. "I thought I should tell someone." The millionaire nodded slowly. "Sometimes seeing something wrong and having the courage to act is more important than anything else," he said. He turned to the security team. "Make sure the plane is completely checked. I won't board it until every inch has been inspected." As the engineers inspected the plane, the girl stayed close, watching intently. She felt a strange mixture of anxiety and excitement. Every moment counted, and she knew she had to stay focused. The security personnel moved systematically, checking the wings, the engine, and the cabin. The millionaire stood nearby, his gaze sharp, making sure no detail was overlooked. The girl noticed that even the smallest details mattered. The way the wires were taped, the placement of screws, the unusual marks on the metal. She pointed out anything that seemed off, and the engineers carefully examined her observations. Her awareness and attention to detail were remarkable, especially for someone so young. Meanwhile, airport security started asking questions. "How did you notice this?" one officer asked gently, kneeling to her level. "You're very observant for your age," the girl shrugged. "I just pay attention," she said simply. "I noticed something shiny and wrong. I didn't know what it was, but I knew it shouldn't be there." The officer nodded, impressed. "You did the right thing by speaking up. You acted bravely." As the inspection continued, the millionaire reflected on what had just happened. He realized that even in the world of wealth and power, sometimes life depended on the smallest acts of courage from the most unexpected people. A child whom he might have ignored in any other situation had potentially saved his life. He felt a deep sense of respect and gratitude. The girl's mother, who had been watching from a safe distance, finally approached. "Are you okay?" she asked softly, wrapping her arms around her daughter. "I'm okay," the girl replied. "The plane is being checked. I think it's safe now." The millionaire turned to the mother. "Your daughter is remarkable," he said. She noticed a detail that could have cost lives, and she had the courage to act. "I don't know how to thank her enough." The mother smiled, a mixture of pride and relief. "She's always been observant," she said. "I'm just glad she acted quickly and nothing happened to anyone." The inspection finally concluded. The engineers removed the device and confirmed that there was no other tampering on the plane. The fuel system and other critical parts were thoroughly checked. The plane was now safe, and the threat had been completely neutralized. The millionaire let out a breath he didn't realize he had been holding. He walked over to the girl, crouching slightly to meet her eyes. "You saved my life today," he said sincerely. "I don't know what would have happened if you hadn't acted. I owe you more than words can say." The girl felt a little embarrassed, but a small smile appeared on her face. "I just saw something wrong," she said quietly. "I didn't do it for thanks." The millionaire shook his head. "That's what makes it even more remarkable. You acted out of instinct and courage, not for reward or recognition. That's true bravery." Airport staff, passengers, and security officers all looked at her with admiration. Many whispered to each other, amazed that such a young girl had prevented a potential tragedy. Some took photos or videos discreetly, knowing this was a moment worth remembering. The millionaire's assistant handed the girl a small notebook. "Write down everything you noticed," he said. "It will help the investigation and make sure your observations are recorded. This is important." The girl carefully wrote down what she had seen: the device, its placement, the wires, and the unusual signs around it. She detailed her observations clearly and calmly, surprising the adults with her careful, methodical approach. While the airport continued its normal operations, the story of her bravery spread quickly among staff and passengers. People started sharing it quietly, telling each other how a child had saved a millionaire from a potential disaster. Some were skeptical at first, but when the details were confirmed, admiration and awe replaced doubt. The millionaire made another point to the girl. "Because of you, no one was hurt. You acted when others hesitated. I want to make sure everyone knows your courage today." The girl's cheeks flushed. "I just did what I thought was right," she said softly. The millionaire smiled warmly. "And that is exactly why it matters. Courage doesn't always come from experience or age. It comes from caring and acting when it counts." "You are extraordinary." Her mother hugged her tightly again. "I am so proud of you," she whispered. "You stayed calm, focused, and brave. You saved lives, and I can't thank you enough for that." The engineers, security officers, and even other passengers continued to praise her, amazed at how a child's quick thinking had prevented a disaster. The airport manager made a note to recognize her officially, ensuring her actions would be remembered and celebrated. The millionaire finally turned to leave, pausing for a moment to glance at her. "Stay brave," he said gently. "The world needs more people like you. Always notice, always act, and always believe in what you see." The girl watched him go, feeling a mixture of awe and humility. She had never imagined that an ordinary day at the airport could turn into something so extraordinary. Her life and the lives of many others had been saved because she had acted, spoken up, and trusted her instincts. As she walked away with her mother, people still whispered and stared in admiration. For the first time, the girl understood something important about life. Courage isn't about size, age, or experience. Courage is about noticing, believing, and acting when it matters most. That day, an ordinary airport became the stage for extraordinary bravery. A young girl standing up in a critical moment had prevented a potential tragedy. And as the plane remained grounded and safe, the millionaire reflected on what he had learned. Heroes can come from the most unexpected places, and even one small voice can make all the difference in the world. The morning at the airport had been tense and chaotic, but now that the sabotage had been discovered and removed, a wave of relief washed over everyone. People who had been tense and focused on their own flights and routines began to relax, exchanging whispers and glances as they processed what had just happened. The girl, who had been at the center of it all, felt a mix of exhaustion and pride. She had acted quickly, and because of her courage, disaster had been avoided. The millionaire, still feeling the weight of the moment, walked toward the young girl again. His expression was one of sincere admiration and gratitude. "You were remarkable today," he said. "You saved my life and everyone else who could have been on that plane. I need you to understand how extraordinary that is." The girl's cheeks flushed, a little embarrassed by the praise. "I just did what I thought was right," she said softly. "I didn't think it would matter so much." "It mattered more than anything," he replied firmly. "Sometimes one voice, one decision can change the course of everything. You proved that today." Airport security personnel, engineers, and the airline staff had gathered around to commend her. The lead security officer bent down to speak to her at eye level. "You acted with courage and clarity. Most adults wouldn't have noticed, and fewer would have had the courage to speak up. You did both." The girl nodded quietly. She felt proud, but she also felt overwhelmed by all the attention. She had never been in a situation like this before. Her mother, who had been watching anxiously, finally stepped closer and held her hand. "I'm so proud of you," she whispered. "You stayed calm and brave. You saved so many lives today." The millionaire looked around at the crowd. "Everyone here should understand that vigilance and courage can come from the most unexpected people," he said. "This girl acted when no one else did. She reminds us all to pay attention, to trust our instincts, and to act when it matters." The engineers had completed their final inspection. The plane was completely safe, and the sabotage device had been carefully removed. They had confirmed that if the girl had not noticed it, the consequences could have been catastrophic. The realization of what had been prevented added weight to the gratitude that everyone felt toward her. The airport manager, a tall man with a firm but kind face, approached the girl and her mother. "We want to make sure your bravery is recognized," he said. "We will report this officially, and there will be recognition for your actions. You have shown the power of courage and observation in a way that deserves attention." The girl's mother smiled warmly, squeezing her daughter's hand. "You've always been observant and careful," she said. "But today you showed bravery that goes beyond what anyone expected." News of the incident started spreading quickly among airport staff and passengers. People whispered about the girl who had saved a millionaire's life, amazed that someone so young had made such a difference. Some passengers had taken photos or videos of the moment she had shouted the warning, and those images were beginning to circulate quietly. The story of her courage was being told over and over, each time growing in admiration and awe. The millionaire decided to speak to the girl privately for a moment. He knelt down slightly to be at her eye level. "I want you to understand something important," he said gently. "Courage doesn't come from strength, age, or experience. It comes from seeing what's right and acting on it. Today you showed true courage, and because of you, lives were saved." The girl nodded, taking in his words. She felt a strange mix of pride and humility. She hadn't acted for recognition or praise. She had acted because she knew something was wrong and couldn't stay silent. Yet hearing that her actions had made a real difference filled her with a sense of accomplishment she had never known before. Meanwhile, airport security and law enforcement began a more detailed investigation. They questioned staff, examined footage from security cameras, and carefully documented the sabotage device. The girl was asked to explain everything she had noticed, from the placement of the device to the suspicious behavior she had observed around it. She described everything calmly and clearly, surprising the adults with her level of attention to detail. The millionaire stayed nearby, observing quietly. He was impressed by her clarity and courage under pressure. "Most adults would have panicked or ignored the warning," he said to one of his assistants. She stayed calm, spoke clearly, and made everyone listen. "That's rare and extraordinary." As the investigation continued, the girl's bravery began to receive recognition from more people. Staff members who had initially doubted her were now praising her sharp observation skills and courage. Engineers marveled at her ability to notice the small but critical detail that had prevented disaster. Even passengers who had been waiting to board their own flights approached to thank her and commend her bravery. The millionaire finally turned to her again. "I want you to know that your actions today have made a lasting impact," he said. "Not just on me, but on everyone who witnessed this. You've inspired people to be vigilant, to be brave, and to act when it matters." The girl smiled shyly, still feeling overwhelmed. She hadn't expected her actions to make such a difference. She had simply followed her instincts, and now she realized that those instincts had saved lives. Her mother hugged her again, whispering words of pride and reassurance. "You've shown everyone what true bravery looks like," she said. "And you've taught me something important too. Never underestimate what someone can do, no matter their age." As the day continued, the airport gradually returned to its normal rhythm, but the story of the girl's bravery continued to spread. Security officers documented the incident thoroughly. Engineers finished their reports, and passengers who had witnessed the scene shared their experiences with friends and colleagues. The girl became a local hero almost instantly, recognized not only for her sharp observation skills, but also for her courage to speak up in a critical moment. The millionaire knew that he needed to honor her in a meaningful way. He spoke with his assistant and began planning a personal way to express his gratitude. He understood that no material reward could fully convey the depth of his appreciation, but he wanted to make sure the girl and her family knew how profoundly she had impacted his life. Later, as the plane remained grounded and the investigation concluded, The millionaire approached the girl one last time before leaving. He handed her a small card. "This is a personal note," he said. "I want you to remember today, and I want you to remember that courage, awareness, and quick thinking matter more than anything else." "Thank you truly." The girl took the card, her fingers trembling slightly. She had never received something so personal or meaningful before. She looked up at him, her eyes wide with a mixture of pride, gratitude, and disbelief. "Thank you," she whispered. The millionaire smiled warmly. "You are the reason lives were saved today. Always trust yourself and your instincts. You are capable of incredible things." As he walked away, she felt a mixture of relief and awe. She had acted quickly, stayed calm, and saved lives. But she also realized something important. Bravery wasn't about being fearless. It was about noticing what was wrong, trusting yourself, and acting even when others doubted you. Her mother held her hand as they walked through the terminal.
"I can't believe what you just did," she said softly.
"You were brave, smart, and calm under pressure. I'm so proud of you." The girl nodded, still processing everything. She had never imagined that a simple observation and a loud warning could have such a huge impact. Today, she had learned that one person, even a child, could make a real difference in the world. Airport staff continued to express their admiration. Engineers praised her attention to detail. Security officers acknowledged her courage. Passengers shared the story with each other, inspired by her quick thinking. And the millionaire whose life had been saved would never forget the child who had acted when it mattered most. That day, a young girl had become more than just an observer. She had become a hero, proving that courage, awareness, and action could overcome even the most dangerous situations. And as she walked away from the plane holding her mother's hand, she knew she would carry this lesson with her forever. Even though the incident was over, the impact of her bravery would be remembered for a long time. The girl had shown the world that age, size, or experience doesn't determine courage. What matters is the willingness to act, to speak up, and to protect others when it counts most. The news of the girl's bravery spread quickly beyond the airport. Within hours, local media had picked up the story. Journalists arrived at the terminal, cameras in hand, eager to hear firsthand from the child who had prevented a disaster. Her face appeared on television screens, in newspapers, and across social media, but she remained humble. She didn't fully understand the attention or why everyone was calling her a hero. To her, she had just done what felt right in the moment. Her mother held her close as reporters asked questions. "How did you notice the device?" one journalist asked. The girl thought for a moment and replied simply, "I just saw something that didn't belong there. I thought it was dangerous, so I shouted." Her honesty and simplicity impressed everyone. There were no exaggerated claims, no attempt to make herself look bigger than the situation. She spoke calmly, with clarity and sincerity. The millionaire, who had been keeping a low profile nearby, watched her and smiled. He knew the world would see what he already understood. This child had remarkable awareness and courage. Airport security and the engineers continued to confirm the facts for the media. They described how a sabotage device had been found on the plane, how it had been removed safely, and how it could have caused a disaster if not discovered. They emphasized that the girl's observation and prompt action were the reason the tragedy had been avoided. Her bravery was no longer just a story at the airport. It was a lesson in courage for everyone watching. The millionaire decided it was time to acknowledge her in a more formal way. He asked his assistant to arrange a small ceremony at the airport, where officials and staff could honor the young girl for her bravery. Invitations were sent to the media, airport authorities, and the engineers who had worked to secure the plane. For the girl, it felt strange at first. She had never imagined herself standing in front of a crowd receiving praise, but she agreed because her mother encouraged her to. The day of the ceremony arrived. The terminal was filled with people, airport staff, reporters, and a few passengers who had witnessed the events firsthand. There were cameras, microphones, and a sense of excitement in the air. The millionaire took the stage, standing tall with a warm expression. He gestured for the girl to join him. "You may not realize it," he began, his voice steady, "but today this young girl saved lives. She noticed something that could have been overlooked by even the most experienced adults. She acted with courage, determination, and clarity. For that, we are all grateful." The audience applauded loudly. The girl's cheeks turned red and she looked down shyly. She wasn't used to so much attention, but the pride in her mother's eyes gave her courage. The millionaire continued. Bravery is not measured by size, age, or status. It is measured by the willingness to act when it matters most. Today, she has shown us all what true courage looks like. The applause grew louder. Airport officials handed her a small plaque, engraved with words recognizing her heroic actions. Engineers and security personnel shook her hand, each offering congratulations. She felt a warm sense of pride, but more importantly, she felt relief that her actions had made a real difference. Later, the millionaire approached her privately. "You did something extraordinary," he said quietly. "And it's not just about saving lives. You've shown people that paying attention and trusting your instincts can make a difference. That's a lesson many adults struggle to learn." The girl nodded slowly, absorbing his words. "I just noticed something wrong and said it," she said softly. "I didn't think I was brave." "Bravery isn't about thinking you are brave," he replied. "It's about doing what is right even when you're unsure or scared. That's what you did today." As the day progressed, the story continued to gain attention. Social media posts praised her courage, news articles highlighted her intelligence and awareness, and airport staff spoke proudly of the child who had made a difference. People of all ages were inspired by her actions. Even other children began sharing stories of noticing problems or acting courageously in their own small ways, encouraged by what she had done. The girl's life began to change, slowly but noticeably. Teachers at her school heard about the story and began to treat her with a newfound respect. Friends were curious about her, asking how she had stayed calm and noticed something so critical. Some classmates were inspired to pay closer attention to their surroundings, realizing that even small observations could matter in life or death situations. At home, her family celebrated quietly. Her parents were overwhelmed with pride and gratitude. "You've shown us all something important," her father said. "Bravery isn't always about fighting or standing in front of danger. Sometimes it's about paying attention, speaking up, and trusting yourself. You've taught us that today." The girl felt humbled. She had never imagined her actions would have such an impact, both locally and beyond. She realized that being observant and courageous could change lives, and that inspired a quiet confidence within her. The millionaire, understanding how much her actions had meant, invited her and her family to his office for a private meeting. He wanted to personally thank her and explain the importance of what she had done. When they arrived, he spoke at length about responsibility, awareness, and the ripple effect of courageous actions. He also made a promise to support her education and provide opportunities that might help her develop her natural skills and intelligence further. "You have something rare," he said, "not just courage, but clarity of thought and a sense of responsibility. Those qualities will take you far. I hope you continue to use them to make a difference in the world." The girl listened, feeling a mixture of pride and disbelief. She had never imagined her life would intersect with someone so influential in such a meaningful way. Yet she understood that what mattered most wasn't fame or recognition. It was that her actions had saved lives and inspired others. As weeks passed, her story continued to circulate. People wrote articles, shared videos, and celebrated her courage. Invitations to schools, community events, and youth programs came in, asking her to speak about her experience. She remained humble, focusing on sharing the lessons she had learned rather than seeking attention. At home, she reflected often on that morning at the airport. She thought about the fear she had felt, the decision to speak up in the moment she had realized the danger. She understood now that courage isn't always loud or obvious. Sometimes it's quiet, thoughtful, and decisive. The ability to act when it truly matters. Her parents supported her every step of the way, encouraging her to pursue her natural talents and interests while reminding her of the responsibility that comes with such extraordinary experiences. "You've already done something incredible," her mother said one evening. "Now it's about continuing to notice, to act wisely, and to grow into the person you are capable of being." The millionaire stayed in touch as well, sending letters and messages of encouragement. He invited her to special events where she could meet professionals who shared his values of awareness, responsibility, and courage. He wanted to ensure that her abilities were nurtured and recognized in ways that could help her grow into someone who could continue to make a positive impact. Throughout it all, the girl remained humble. She never sought praise or rewards. She understood that the true reward had been knowing she had acted correctly, prevented harm, and saved lives. Her story became a symbol, reminding people that one individual, even a child, can make a tremendous difference when they act with courage and clarity. The airport, too, continued to honor her bravery. Staff placed a small plaque near the terminal to commemorate the incident and remind everyone that vigilance and courage are essential. Airport personnel often shared her story with new employees, ensuring that her actions would continue to inspire long after the incident. In schools, community centers, and among peers, her story spread further. Children learned that paying attention and acting responsibly can have serious positive effects. Adults, too, were reminded that courage doesn't always come with authority or experience. It can come from anyone who chooses to act when it counts. The young girl's life returned to a semblance of normalcy, but the lessons she had learned stayed with her. She approached everyday situations with greater awareness, paying attention to details and thinking carefully before acting. She understood the power of observation, the importance of speaking up, and the impact that one small action can have on the world. And through it all, she remembered the morning at the airport, the fear, the decision to shout, and the moment when she realized that her action had truly made a difference. That memory became a guiding principle, shaping the way she approached life, relationships, and challenges. Her story became more than a look. Headline. It became a lesson in courage, awareness, and the power of a single person to influence outcomes. The girl who had saved a millionaire's life with a warning shout had become an inspiration, reminding everyone that bravery can come in unexpected forms, and that paying attention, acting quickly, and speaking up can save lives and change the world. Life after that morning at the airport changed in ways the girl never expected. The attention she received was new and sometimes overwhelming, but she learned to navigate it with quiet confidence. Her story had reached thousands of people, and she began to understand that what she had done mattered far beyond her own life. She had acted out of instinct and courage, and now the ripple effect of that decision was touching countless others. School became an interesting place after the incident. Teachers and classmates treated her differently, with respect and curiosity. They asked her questions about how she noticed the device, how she had stayed calm, and what she had felt in that moment. She answered honestly, often downplaying her role. "I just saw something that looked wrong," she would say. "I didn't want anyone to get hurt, so I said something." Her classmates were inspired. Some began paying more attention to their surroundings, noticing small details they had previously ignored. Others found courage in her example, realizing that speaking up even when they felt unsure could make a real difference. The girl never sought attention or praise, but she began to understand the power of example. Even small actions could influence others in meaningful ways. At home, her family continued to support and guide her. They encouraged her to pursue her natural curiosity, her attention to detail, and her ability to remain calm in difficult situations. They also helped her balance the recognition she was receiving with the everyday life of school, friends, and hobbies. "What you did was extraordinary," her mother said one evening. "But never forget that the lessons you learned, the courage, the awareness, the responsibility, are what matter most. That is what will shape your life." The millionaire stayed in contact, checking in periodically to see how she was doing. He invited her and her family to visit his office, where she could meet people who valued the same qualities of vigilance, responsibility, and courage that she had displayed. Each meeting was an opportunity to learn, to understand the world of critical decisions, and to see how ordinary actions could lead to extraordinary results. One day he spoke to her quietly in his office. "You've shown that courage is not about size or age," he said. "It's about paying attention, trusting your instincts, and acting when it matters most. That lesson is rare and valuable. Never forget it." The girl listened carefully, absorbing his words. She realized that what she had done that day was not only about saving lives, it was also about understanding responsibility and influence. Even the smallest choices could have major consequences, and she wanted to continue making decisions that could help others. Over time, the media attention subsided somewhat, but the impact of her actions remained. Her story continued to be shared in schools, community programs, and even in local news segments focusing on bravery and awareness. Children and adults alike were reminded that being observant and courageous could save lives and prevent disasters. The girl began to feel a quiet pride, not in the recognition, but in the knowledge that she had acted correctly. She realized that bravery wasn't about performing grand gestures for attention. It was about noticing what is wrong and taking action, even when no one else is paying attention. That principle guided her in many aspects of life afterward, from small everyday decisions to moments that required courage and honesty. One afternoon, she walked through the airport with her mother. The terminal was bustling, but she felt calm. She noticed small details: the way staff moved, luggage was handled, and passengers walked through the terminal. Her awareness had grown naturally, not because she wanted to be vigilant, but because the experience had shown her the importance of observation and attentiveness. As they walked past the same terminal where the incident had occurred, she paused and looked at the private jet that had been the center of it all. Memories of that morning came rushing back. The fear, the decision to shout, and the moment of relief when the sabotage device was discovered. She understood in a deep and personal way that the courage to act had changed everything. Her mother noticed her pause. "Thinking about that day?" she asked. The girl nodded. "Yes, I can't believe what could have happened if I hadn't said something." "You did exactly what was needed," her mother said gently. "And that's what counts. Not what could have happened, but what you did. You were brave and you acted wisely." The millionaire eventually visited them again, bringing along some of his staff and security personnel. He wanted to share with her how her actions had influenced not just immediate safety, but also long-term procedures at the airport. Security protocols had been updated, staff trained to be more observant, and engineers instructed to double-check areas where small, unnoticed devices could pose risks. The ripple effect of her courage was tangible. "You've changed things for the better," he said sincerely. "Because of you, people are safer and processes are stronger. That's a remarkable achievement for someone your age." The girl felt a sense of fulfillment. She had acted out of instinct, and now she saw that the effect of her actions had extended far beyond what she could have imagined. It wasn't about fame or praise. It was about the real impact she had on the safety and awareness of countless people. At school, she began to share her experience in subtle ways. She didn't seek the spotlight, but she encouraged classmates to pay attention, to trust their instincts, and to speak up when something seemed wrong. Teachers noticed a positive change as students became more engaged in observing their surroundings and thinking critically. The girl's story became a quiet yet powerful influence on the next generation, showing them that courage and attentiveness could make a difference in real life. Her parents continued to guide her, emphasizing balance, humility, and learning. "You've already made a huge difference," her father said one evening. "Now it's about using that experience to grow, to learn, and to help others whenever you can." The girl understood that her journey was ongoing. She had learned the value of observation, the importance of courage, and the responsibility that comes with knowledge. She knew that life would present challenges, but the lessons from that day at the airport had prepared her in ways she could not yet fully grasp. Months later, the airport placed a small commemorative plaque near the terminal, honoring her bravery. Staff often shared the story with new employees, ensuring that the lesson of vigilance, courage, and action would continue to inspire long after the initial incident. Passengers passing by would read the plaque and sometimes pause to reflect on the power of a single person to make a difference. The girl continued her normal life, but with a quiet confidence and awareness. She understood the importance of her instincts, the weight of her decisions, and the value of acting with courage. She had learned that extraordinary outcomes often come from ordinary people choosing to do the right thing in critical moments. One evening, sitting with her mother and reflecting on the experience, she realized something important. "I thought bravery meant being fearless," she said softly. "But I understand now. It's about noticing what's wrong, believing in yourself, and acting even when it's scary." Her mother nodded. "Exactly. And you've shown everyone that courage isn't measured by age or strength. It's measured by action, by responsibility, and by care. You've set an example that will last a lifetime." The millionaire, who had remained in touch, sent her letters of encouragement periodically. He praised her continued humility, her quiet confidence, and the way she used her experience to inspire others. He reminded her that the values she had demonstrated, courage, awareness, and action, were qualities that would guide her throughout life and help her influence the world positively. As the months turned into years, the girl's story became a symbol of vigilance and bravery. Children and adults alike were reminded that one person's awareness and courage could prevent disasters, save lives, and change the course of events. Her experience inspired others to pay attention to small details, to trust their instincts, and to act with responsibility. And while she grew older, Attending school, learning and exploring new experiences. She carried the lessons of that day with her. The memory of that morning at the airport remained vivid. The fear, the decision to speak up, and the relief of knowing she had made a difference. It shaped her choices, her perspective, and her understanding of what it meant to be brave. Her life was never about recognition, fame, or praise. It was about understanding that even a single action, taken at the right time, could ripple outward and affect countless lives. She had learned the extraordinary power of ordinary people making responsible, courageous choices. And in the quiet moments, when she thought back to that morning, she felt a deep sense of fulfillment. She had acted correctly. She had saved lives, and she had shown the world that courage, observation, and action could come from the most unexpected sources. A young girl standing tall in the face of danger had become a lasting example of bravery, inspiring countless others to act wisely and responsibly whenever it mattered most.